The moon, a sliver of forgotten silver, offered scant illumination as the hulking figures emerged from the inky blackness. The air hung thick with the scent of salt and decay, a fitting stage for the horror unfolding near Islamorada, Florida. Two men, their faces obscured by the shadows cast by their menacing motorcycles parked on a nearby dock, dragged a young woman, her form strangely limp, across the rough coral of a shallow reef. The sharp edges of the coral grate against her skin, a sound swallowed by the gentle lapping of the tide. Her eyes, wide with terror, reflected the distant glow of the mainland, a world away from her immediate, terrifying reality. They spoke in guttural whispers, their words a chilling symphony of malevolence, before she was unceremoniously tossed into the barely submerged reef, a cruel abandonment designed to ensure she would never trouble them again. The bikers, leather-clad specters, watched for a moment, a silent affirmation of their dark deed, then roared their engines to life, disappearing into the night, leaving only the sound of the ocean and the faint, desperate wheezing of their victim. The reef, a vibrant ecosystem by day, became a cold, unforgiving tomb under the oppressive weight of the night. Her vulnerability was absolute, a fragile life relinquished to the indifference of the sea. Miles away, in a secluded cove sheltered by mangroves, lived Logan. A Marine veteran, Logan had sought refuge in Islamorada, the shimmering waters and endless horizon offering a stark contrast to the dust-choked battlefields of his past. He lived a life of quiet solitude, his days dictated by the rhythm of the tides and the needs of his unique companion, Echo. Echo wasn't just a dolphin. He was a comrade, a friend, a sentient being with whom Logan shared an unbreakable bond, forged years ago when Logan rescued the injured creature from a tangled fishing net. Echo, sleek and powerful, was more than a pet. He was family, a constant reminder of the gentle beauty that still existed in the world. Logan's small, weather-beaten cottage perched precariously on stilts, a testament to his deliberate isolation. He spent his mornings mending nets, his afternoons exploring the intricate network of channels and flats in his modest skiff, and his evenings watching the sunset paint the sky in fiery hues. Echo often swimming alongside, a silent guardian. His past service was a ghost that occasionally haunted his dreams, but the present offered a fragile peace, meticulously maintained through routine and the calming presence of the ocean. The first hint of trouble came with the dawn. As the sun began to warm the eastern sky, casting long fingers of light across the water, Logan and Echo embarked on their usual early morning patrol. Echo, normally playful and exuberant, became agitated, his chirps and clicks growing frantic. He surfaced repeatedly, his blows sharp and distressed, pointing his rostrum agitatedly towards a distant, barely visible reef Logan knew well. It was a notoriously shallow and treacherous patch of coral, far from any usual boating lanes. Logan, attuned to every subtle shift in Echo's demeanor, immediately recognized the urgency. This wasn't a playful summons, it was a distress call. He cut the engine of his skiff, allowing the gentle current to carry them closer, his gaze sweeping the horizon. Echo's agitated behavior intensified, his body language communicating an undeniable plea. Perplexed and concerned, Logan peered through his binoculars, methodically scanning the reef. It took several moments, the rising sun playing tricks on his eyes before his breath hitched. There, tangled amongst the unforgiving coral, was a motionless form. A young woman. The sight sent a jolt of ice through him. This was no accident. This was something far more sinister. Echo, sensing Logan's understanding, let out a mournful cry, a sound that echoed the silent horror unfolding before them. Echo's frantic clicking and insistent nudging left no room for doubt. Something was gravely amiss. Logan, propelled by an instinct honed in far harsher environments than the Florida Keys, quickly maneuvered their small skiff closer to the coral formation. The early morning light, still too weak to fully pierce the water's surface, hinted at a shape splayed across the jagged coral. As they drew nearer, the horrifying reality coalesced. A young woman, impossibly still, entangled amongst the razor-sharp outcroppings. His marine training, dormant for years beneath a thick blanket of self-imposed reclusion, snapped into sharp focus. Logan's eyes rapidly scanned her prone form. Her skin, ghostly pale against the vibrant coral, showed clear signs of severe hypothermia. Chattering teeth, visible even from a short distance, confirmed the cold had already begun its relentless assault. Dehydration was also a certainty, her lips cracked and dry, a stark contrast to the vast expanse of ocean surrounding her. He noted the unnatural angle of her left arm, a sickening twist that suggested possible fractures or dislocation. Blood, dark against her soaked clothing, stained the water around her, indicating numerous lacerations from the unforgiving coral. Her breathing, shallow and irregular, was barely perceptible. Logan's stomach clenched. She was clinging to life by the thinnest of threads. The gravity of the situation hit him like a physical blow. They were miles from civilization, the nearest 8 hours away by boat, even if he had a fully functioning communication system, which he did not. The tide, slowly but inexorably, was beginning to rise, threatening to submerge her completely, or worse, drag her off the reef into the deeper currents. Every passing minute was a precious commodity, rapidly diminishing. Her survival, he realized with a chilling clarity, was entirely dependent on him and Echo. His past life, the quiet solitude he had so carefully constructed, shattered under the sudden, immense weight of this unexpected responsibility. The choice was not a choice at all. It was an imperative, a primal call to action that bypassed all his reclusive tendencies. The years of suppressing his inner warrior fell away, replaced by the steely resolve of a man trained to save lives in dire circumstances. He was no longer just Logan, the recluse. He was a rescuer, a lifeline. He moved with a practiced efficiency, his hands already anticipating the next steps. "Okay, Echo," he murmured, his voice low and steady, a calming presence amidst the escalating crisis. "We need to get her off this reef. Gently." Echo responded with a soft chirp, her intelligent eyes fixed on the girl, a clear understanding of the urgency in her gaze. Logan carefully eased himself from the skiff into the waist-deep water, the cold instantly biting at his skin. The current, though gentle now, made each step treacherous on the uneven, slippery coral. He approached the girl slowly, his movements deliberate, trying not to startle her further. He could see now the bruises blossoming across her face, suggesting not just an accidental fall, but a violent ordeal. He reached for her, his touch as light as possible, wincing at the grunts of pain she emitted, barely conscious. Her weight, combined with the drag of the water and the fear of inflicting further injury, made the initial attempts to move her an excruciating challenge. Echo, ever vigilant, positioned herself under the girl's legs, offering crucial buoyancy, her strong body a silent, living stretcher. Together, with painstaking slowness, they began the arduous task of lifting her inch by agonizing inch towards the waiting skiff. The coral continued to demand its toll, scraping against Logan's shins and arms, but he barely registered the pain. All that mattered was the fragile life in his hands and the urgency of getting her to safety before the rising tide engulfed them both. The journey back to Logan's secluded home became a test of endurance against the elements and his own lingering doubts. The sun, which had barely hinted at dawn, now struggled to pierce through an ominous, swiftly gathering cloud cover. The gentle morning breeze had morphed into a blustery, unforgiving wind, whipping whitecaps across the already choppy waters of the Florida Bay. Logan, a seasoned veteran of both calm seas and turbulent battlegrounds, understood the language of a brewing storm. His small vessel, usually a nimble extension of his will, now bucked and swayed, threatening to dislodge its precious, fragile cargo. He gripped the tiller, his knuckles white, his gaze fixed on the girl, who lay huddled beneath a hastily draped tarp, her shivers becoming more pronounced, her breathing shallow and ragged. Every bump and plunge of the boat was a fresh jolt of anxiety, a silent prayer that her battered body could withstand the relentless motion. He constantly adjusted his course, seeking the shallowest, most protected passages through the winding mangroves, relying on an intimate knowledge of the labyrinthine channels that only years of solitary navigation could provide. The familiar hum of the outboard motor was a constant companion, a defiant roar against the growing howl of the wind. Through it all, Echo remained a steadfast guardian. The dolphin swam alongside the boat, her sleek form cutting effortlessly through the increasingly agitated water. She would occasionally surface, lifting her head to meet Logan's eyes with an almost human understanding, then dive again, as if scouting the path ahead or merely offering a silent reassurance. Her presence was a balm to Logan's frayed nerves, a reminder that he wasn't entirely alone in this desperate endeavor. As the journey progressed, a new layer of understanding began to form in Logan's mind. He risked fleeting glances at the girl whenever the boat offered a moment of relative stability. Her face, even beneath the grime and salt water, bore the unmistakable imprint of terror, far beyond the physical trauma of being left on a reef. Her eyes, whenever she briefly opened them, held a haunted quality, darting nervously as if expecting an unseen threat to materialize from the churning waves. There was a raw vulnerability in her posture, a defensive curl that spoke volumes about her recent ordeal. This wasn't merely an accident victim. She was a survivor, likely of something far more sinister than a misstep into the unforgiving ocean. The way she flinched at sudden movements, the almost imperceptible tensing of her muscles when the boat hit a particularly harsh wave, all pointed to a deeper, more profound trauma. He found himself growing increasingly protective, a flicker of an old, familiar instinct stirring within him. The need to shield the innocent, to stand between vulnerability and threat. This was a feeling he hadn't fully embraced since leaving the structured world of military service, a world where such duties were clearly defined. Now, in the chaotic embrace of a burgeoning storm and the silent plea in a stranger's eyes, that sense of purpose began to reassert itself. Echo seemed to mirror his growing resolve, occasionally nudging the boat with her snout, a gentle, powerful touch that felt like a quiet urging forward. The bond they shared, forged in solitude and mutual respect, became a silent, unwavering support system, guiding them through the turbulent waters towards the distant, hopeful glimmer of safety Logan's home represented. The small, isolated dwelling nestled amidst the mangroves suddenly felt less like a sanctuary from the world and more like a beacon of desperate hope. The small, isolated dwelling nestled amidst the mangroves suddenly felt less like a sanctuary from the world and more like a beacon of desperate hope. Logan expertly navigated the final narrow channel, the boat gliding quietly into the hidden cove where his simple home stood, almost invisible from the main waterway. The journey, fraught with peril, had finally ended. With careful movements, he lifted the girl from the rocking boat, her body surprisingly light, a testament to her frail state. He carried her inside, laying her gently on his cot, the makeshift bed a stark contrast to the luxurious surroundings she might have once known. Immediately, Logan set about providing basic first aid. He quickly lit a small fire in the wood-burning stove, its warmth gradually chasing away the pervasive chill that had seeped into the girl's bones. He stripped away her soaked, tattered clothes, replacing them with a pair of his own clean, albeit oversized sweatpants and a soft flannel shirt. The contrast was stark, her delicate frame almost swallowed by the rough fabric. As he carefully tended to a nasty gash on her forehead and several smaller cuts on her arms and legs, he noticed it. Around her neck, almost hidden beneath her matted hair, was a small, intricately designed silver locket. It appeared old, worn smooth in places by countless touches, a deeply personal piece that seemed completely out of place given the brutality of her ordeal. He didn't open it, respecting the small shred of privacy it represented, but its presence spoke volumes about a life beyond the reef, a past she carried close. The flickering firelight danced across her face as he worked, revealing the faint lines of exhaustion and fear that lingered even in her unconscious state. She stirred occasionally, small whimpers escaping her lips, her body trembling not just from the cold, but from some deeper, internal terror. He offered her sips of warm, sweetened tea, hoping the sugar would help bring her back to lucidity. "You're safe now," he murmured, his voice gruff but reassuring. "Just rest." Her eyes fluttered open, wide and unfocused, then darted around the unfamiliar cabin, landing on Logan with a jolt of renewed fear. She tried to speak, but only a raspy whisper emerged, fragmented words barely audible. Men. Big. Secret. Her gaze was wild, filled with a primal terror that made Logan's stomach clench. He knelt beside her, trying to project calm. "It's okay. You're safe. What men? What secret?" But her eyes squeezed shut again, a fresh wave of panic washing over her, and she retreated back into the hazy borderland of semi-consciousness. The fragmented words, however, hung in the air, chilling Logan to the bone. This was more than an accident. It was an escape. The profound peace Logan had meticulously cultivated in his isolation, a shield against the jagged edges of his past, felt utterly shattered. The quiet rhythm of his solitary existence, punctuated only by the calls of seabirds and the gentle lapping of waves, had been violently disrupted. Yet, amidst the discomfort of this upheaval, a strange sensation began to bloom within him. A renewed sense of purpose. It was the familiar weight of responsibility, a burden he thought he had shed with his uniform, but one that now felt strangely welcome. The girl, fragile and vulnerable, had inadvertently reignited a spark within him, a dormant instinct to protect, to stand against injustice. His quiet solitude had been a haven, but now, faced with this raw, human need, he realized it might have also been a prison. He looked towards the open door, where Echo's sleek head occasionally broke the surface of the cove. Her watchful gaze a silent acknowledgement of their shared, newfound mission. The subdued light filtering through Logan's blinds marked the onset of a new day. But for Sarah, consciousness returned in fragmented waves, each bringing a fresh assault of memories. As the warmth of dry clothes and Logan's basic first aid seeped into her chilled body, she began to speak, her voice raspy, punctuated by shudders that had nothing to do with the cool air. The pieces were slow to emerge, disjointed at first, like jigsaw pieces scattered across a table. "Bikers," she whispered. the word a poison on her tongue. A deal gone wrong. A hidden stash. The name Sarah was delivered with a fragile defiance, a desperate reclaiming of identity after being reduced to an object. Logan listened intently, his expression unreadable, a silent anchor in her storm. He offered her sips of water, a calming presence that encouraged her hesitant confessions. Each word Sarah uttered, each terrified glance began to paint a more complete and far more sinister picture. She spoke of powerful, intimidating men, their faces etched with a disregard for law and life, and of a reckless gamble that had spiraled into violence. They spoke of a drop, a transfer of illicit goods, and how her accidental witnessing of it had sealed her fate. The reef had been intended as her watery grave, a brutal message delivered with cold precision. As Sarah regained strength, her recollections sharpened. She described the gang's leader, a man named Viper, known for his cold eyes and a distinctive silver skull ring. She remembered snippets of their conversations, hushed words about routes and pickup points, places Logan knew intimately from his years navigating the Keys. His mind, still sharp from his military training, began to sift through the data, connecting Sarah's fragmented story to local rumors that had long whispered of an outlaw biker gang's growing presence and their suspected involvement in smuggling, largely ignored or dismissed as coastal folklore by many. He knew the hidden coves, the deserted stretches of coastline, the perfect places for clandestine operations. His understanding of the local waterways, honed by long days of solitary exploration, transformed from a personal refuge into a tactical advantage. The reclusive life he had cultivated, designed to keep the world at bay, now provided the perfect cover for an investigation. Logan considered his assets, his knowledge, his boat, and most importantly, Echo. The dolphin, seemingly sensing the gravity of the situation, remained close. She'd circled the dock where Logan's boat was moored. Her soft clicks and whistles a constant, reassuring presence. Logan knew Echo's superior senses and unparalleled understanding of the complex marine environment would be invaluable. Her echolocation could detect anomalies, her speed could cover vast distances, and her innate curiosity often led her to discover things humans overlooked. She was more than a companion now. She was a marine reconnaissance unit, an extension of his own burgeoning resolve. He began to meticulously plan. First, he needed to ascertain the truth of Sarah's claims, to find proof beyond her terrified whispers. He started with the locations she vaguely recalled, beginning with the closest, a shallow inlet known locally as Smuggler's Bend. Logan would venture out in his skiff, often with Echo leading the way, silently patrolling the murky waters, his eyes scanning the shorelines, his mind piecing together the invisible puzzle of a criminal enterprise. Echo would swim ahead, her clicks probing the depths, her intelligent eyes searching for anything out of place. This wasn't merely a rescue anymore. It was an undeclared war, and Logan, with Echo by his side, was preparing for battle. His resolve hardened with each passing hour, solidified by Sarah's fragmented whispers and the chilling implications they carried. The isolated dwelling, once his sanctuary, now felt like a temporary outpost in a rapidly developing conflict. He knew he couldn't simply wait for the bikers to inevitably come looking for her for what she represented. Action was required, discreet and calculated, a dance on the edge of danger. Logan decided to start where the rumors were thickest, a dilapidated bar on the outskirts of Islamorada, notorious as a biker hangout. He prepared meticulously, choosing the cover of twilight, dressing in nondescript clothing that would allow him to blend into the shadows. Echo, sensing the shift in his demeanor, remained close, her silent presence a comforting anchor as he launched his small, dark skiff. The bar buzzed with a low, guttural energy, the thumping bass of classic rock barely masking the murmur of gruff voices. Logan slipped inside, finding a corner table that afforded him a clear line of sight to the entrance and periphery. He ordered a soda, his eyes scanning, observing, absorbing every detail. It wasn't long before a group of burly men, their leather vests adorned with menacing club patches, swaggered in. Their presence immediately shifted the atmosphere, a palpable tension coiling around them. One, a particularly large man with a braided beard and a scar bisecting his eyebrow, barked orders at the bartender, his voice echoing with an almost predatory authority. Logan kept his gaze casual, yet every fiber of his being registered their movements, their interactions. He recognized the type, the dominant alpha figures, the enforcers. He'd seen them in different uniforms, different contexts, but the underlying aggression was universally understood. As the burly biker turned to survey the room, his eyes momentarily swept past Logan's table. For a heart-stopping second, Logan felt a prickle of recognition, a primal instinct screaming that he'd been made. He froze, outwardly unaffected. inwardly braced for a confrontation. But the biker's gaze moved on, dismissing him as just another local, another face in the crowd. The close call was a stark reminder of the danger he was stepping into. These weren't petty thugs. They were organized, ruthless, and highly territorial. He saw the way they interacted with other patrons, a sneer here, a veiled threat there, asserting their dominance without a word. He overheard fragments of conversation, muttered references to loose ends and keeping things quiet, phrases that sent a chill down his spine, confirming Sarah's worst fears. Back at his home, the faint light of a lantern cast long shadows as Sarah recounted more details, her voice still trembling but gaining strength with each shared memory. "They said I saw too much," she whispered, clutching a worn blanket around her shoulders. "It was a shipment, something big. They talked about the drop and how I was a liability." Her eyes were wide with remembered terror. "They didn't just want me gone. They wanted me silenced permanently. They laughed when they threw me on the reef, said the sharks would finish the job." The image was horrifying, painting a picture of cold, calculated cruelty. "You have to be careful, Logan. They're everywhere. They know these waters better than anyone. They'll kill you if they think you're helping me." Her words, far from deterring him, ignited a dormant fire within Logan. The thought of those men, laughing while leaving a vulnerable young woman to die, sickened him. The encounter at the bar, the casual menace in their eyes, the overheard snippets of their dark enterprise, it all coalesced into a singular, undeniable truth. Sarah wasn't just a victim. She was living proof of their barbarity, and he was now her last line of defense. The quiet life, the retreat from the world, seemed a distant memory. The weight of responsibility, the familiar call to protect the innocent, settled upon his shoulders with an undeniable force. This wasn't just about Sarah anymore. It was about confronting an injustice that festered in the very waters he called home. His resolve solidified into an unshakable determination. He would protect Sarah, and he would expose these men. Logan, with Echo swimming silently just behind his skiff, began meticulously searching the areas Sarah had described. Her fragmented memories, now clearer and more coherent, painted a vivid picture of specific coves and mangrove tunnels where the bikers conducted their illicit dealings. The early morning mist still clung to the water's surface, lending an ethereal, almost secretive quality to their quest. He moved with the practiced stealth of a predator, his eyes constantly scanning the shoreline, the tangled roots of the mangroves, and the subtle currents. Echo, with her keen sonar, was his invaluable partner, her clicks and whistles a constant stream of information he had learned to interpret with remarkable accuracy. Their initial sweep yielded subtle but undeniable signs: discarded plastic ties identical to those used in commercial shipping, found snagged on mangrove roots in a seemingly untouched inlet, faint but distinct propeller marks on muddy flats that indicated a heavy, slow-moving vessel had recently passed, inconsistent with typical local fishing traffic, and most disturbingly, coded markings carved into the bark of certain trees, symbols Sarah had recognized from her brief and terrifying proximity to the bikers' operations. These weren't random vandalism. They were deliberate, territorial signs, a criminal language etched into the natural world. Sarah's clearer recollections, shared in hushed tones back at Logan's secluded home, revealed the true, dark nature of the biker gang's enterprise. It wasn't merely petty smuggling. It was a sophisticated, high-volume operation, likely involving drugs or other high-value contraband. She had stumbled upon a carefully orchestrated drop, a transfer of goods from a larger vessel to smaller, faster boats, likely destined for the mainland or other islands. They were unloading crates, she'd explained, her voice still thin with fear. Big, heavy ones. And they were arguing about a missing package. That's when they saw me. I just happened to be in the wrong place at the wrong time. Her presence threatened to expose their entire network, making her not just an inconvenience, but a critical liability. Leaving her on the reef, as she confirmed, was a brutal, calculated warning to anyone who might consider interfering, and a gruesome attempt to silence her permanently. The casual cruelty of their actions gnawed at Logan, fueling his determination. It was Echo who made the pivotal discovery. As they navigated a particularly dense patch of mangroves, her usual playful chirps turned into a series of short, urgent clicks. Logan followed her lead, his skiff gliding silently through the narrow passage. Echo ducked beneath a submerged root system, her tail flukes barely breaking the surface. She resurfaced moments later, nudging Logan's hand with her rostrum, then diving again. Logan reached into the murky water where she indicated, his fingers closing around something unexpectedly heavy and roughly cylindrical. He pulled it out, dripping with seawater, a tightly sealed, waterproof package about the size of a small brick. The contents, once carefully unwrapped, confirmed Sarah's story with chilling precision. Inside lay several kilos of what appeared to be high-grade cocaine, meticulously packaged. This wasn't just a clue, it was tangible evidence, irrefutable proof of the biker's criminal enterprise. The package was discreetly marked with the same cryptic symbol Logan had seen carved into the trees. Echo's unique ability, her natural sonar, had cut through the water's opacity and the biker's attempts at concealment, proving to be an indispensable asset in their dangerous investigation. This discovery solidified Logan's understanding of the depth of the biker's operation. The bikers, a phantom menace Logan had only just begun to truly grasp, were now actively searching for Sarah. Their casual disregard for human life, vividly painted by Sarah's harrowing account of being left for dead, had hardened into a chilling reality. Daily, Logan observed subtle yet unmistakable shifts in the local maritime traffic. More often, he spotted unfamiliar, powerful skiffs, their outboards humming with an almost aggressive impatience, cutting through familiar channels. Their movements were not random. They were systematic, a predatory sweep of the islands and shallow waters, a tightening net. He noticed their presence near isolated coves, places where he and Echo often sought refuge, places too remote for casual recreation. The air grew heavy with a new tension, a pervasive sense of being watched, a knowledge that his sanctuary had been compromised. This escalation, while increasing the immediate danger, also sharpened Logan's focus. His marine training, a skill set honed in environments far more hostile than the serene Florida Keys, clicked into place. He wasn't just a recluse anymore. He was a guardian, and Sarah was under his protection. Direct confrontation remained a last resort, a strategy he wanted to avoid at all costs. Instead, he began to meticulously plan, drawing upon his intimate knowledge of the unforgiving mangrove labyrinth and treacherous reef systems. The environment itself would be his ally. He studied tide charts, wind patterns, and the subtle currents that shaped the archipelago. He mapped out potential escape routes, observation points, and places where evidence could be gathered discreetly. His plan was not about brute force, but about tactical superiority, using stealth and precision to outmaneuver an enemy that relied on intimidation and overwhelming numbers. He started by reinforcing the perimeter of his secluded property, not with fences or physical barriers, but with an intricate network of tripwires made from fishing line, designed to alert him to any unauthorized approach. He positioned motion-activated cameras, scavenged from old hunting gear, in strategic locations along the shoreline and the narrow channel leading to his dock. These weren't for capturing definitive evidence, but for early warning, for buying precious seconds. He even began to train Echo, not in new tricks, but in more nuanced, covert communication. A specific tail slap, a unique vocalization, a particular circling pattern. These would become signals, indicating the presence of strangers or marking an area of interest. Echo, with her innate intelligence and deep bond with Logan, seemed to grasp the gravity of their situation, her playful demeanor now interspersed with moments of quiet vigilance. Sarah, witnessing Logan's calm determination and methodical approach, began to shed the layers of paralyzing fear that had encased her. She saw not just a rescuer, but a protector, a man capable of strategic thought and decisive action. Her initial terror, a raw, almost animalistic fear, slowly transformed into a profound and unwavering trust. She listened intently as he explained his plans, absorbing every detail, offering insights she remembered from her time with the bikers. Their routines, their preferred routes, their blind spots. She started to feel less like a helpless victim and more like a crucial part of a team, her knowledge becoming a weapon against her former tormentors. The unspoken connection between them deepened, forged in the crucible of shared danger and a common purpose. This wasn't merely survival anymore. It was a quiet, relentless fight for justice, waged on the fringes of civilization, with only a man, a girl, and a dolphin against a ruthless criminal enterprise. The stakes were impossibly high, and the game had just begun. The sun beat down relentlessly, reflecting off the glassy surface of the water, making it difficult to discern anything beyond a shimmering haze. Logan, hunched low in his skiff, scanned the mangrove-lined channels, his heart a steady drum against his ribs. Sarah, hidden beneath a camouflage tarp, clutched a pair of binoculars, occasionally peeking out. They were deep within the labyrinthine backcountry, following a hunch Logan had developed after piecing together Sarah's vague recollections and his own intimate knowledge of unusual marine traffic patterns. Echo swam silently alongside, her sleek form barely disturbing the water, her senses finely tuned to any anomaly. Suddenly, Echo's body tensed, a quick, almost imperceptible flick of her tail. Logan froze, his hand instinctively going to the tiller, ready to cut the engine. A low rumble, distinct even over the droning cicadas, grew louder. Through a break in the mangroves, he caught a glimpse. Two powerful outboard engines, churning white foam, propelling a larger, faster boat directly towards their position. Panic threatened to rise in Sarah's throat, but Logan's calm demeanor was a lifeline. He yanked the pull cord, silencing his small engine instantly. The sudden quiet was deafening. "Stay absolutely still," he whispered, his voice a low command. "Don't move, don't make a sound." The approaching boat was unmistakably a biker patrol, two heavily built figures visible at the helm, scanning the waterways with an intensity that sent a chill down Logan's spine. Just as their boat was about to pass their hidden cove, Echo sprang into action. With a powerful surge, she broke the surface, arcing gracefully out of the water in a magnificent, attention-grabbing leap, directly in the path of the oncoming patrol boat. The bikers, startled, instinctively swerved, shouting epithets as they narrowly avoided a collision with the playful dolphin. The distraction was brief, but it was enough. Their boat roared past Logan's hidden skiff, never registering their presence. Logan let out a slow, controlled breath he hadn't realized he was holding. He risked a glance at Sarah, whose eyes were wide with a mixture of terror and awe. Echo, after her heroic diversion, submerged and returned to his side, a silent, knowing presence. They resumed their cautious progress, deeper into a secluded cove Sarah had mentioned, a place so remote few locals even knew of its existence. The air grew heavy with the scent of salt water and decaying vegetation, the mangroves forming an impenetrable wall. Then, through a narrow, almost invisible opening, they saw it. Nestled against a hidden bank, a large camouflage tent was erected, surrounded by stacks of what looked like heavy sealed crates. Several more boats, far too large for recreational fishing, were carefully concealed. This was it, the hidden cache. Sarah gasped softly, a silent confirmation of their discovery. Logan's heart pounded, not with fear, but with the cold, calculated rush of a soldier finding his target. This wasn't just a small operation. This was a sophisticated, well-organized smuggling hub. The sheer volume of contraband suggested a network far more extensive than he had initially imagined. The implication of this discovery weighed heavily on him. He crouched low, observing the activity around the camp. Figures moved with purpose, loading and unloading, their faces obscured by the shadows and distance. This was a critical piece of evidence, undeniable proof of the bikers' illicit activities. It was far too big to ignore, far too dangerous to confront alone. He couldn't simply walk away, not now. The lives of others, perhaps many others, depended on this operation being shut down. But how? How could he, a solitary man, even with Echo's incredible assistance, take down such a well-entrenched, ruthless organization? The questions swirled in his mind, the path forward unclear, yet the resolve to see this through burned brighter than ever. He knew he needed to get this information to the authorities, but carefully, without alerting the very people he aimed to expose. The clock was ticking. The gravity of their discovery gnawed at Logan. He knew he couldn't engage these criminals directly. The odds were overwhelmingly against him, and Sarah's safety remained his paramount concern. He needed to find a way to alert official channels, but carefully, without tipping off the very powerful, dangerous individuals they were now investigating. His mind immediately went to Lieutenant Commander Miller, a former naval intelligence officer he'd served with years ago, now working for a specialized task force targeting organized crime in the Florida Keys. Miller was smart, tenacious, and most importantly, discreet. Finding a secure way to contact Miller without leaving a digital footprint was a challenge. Logan didn't own a smartphone, preferring the simple, untraceable flip phone he kept for emergencies. He drove to a small, unassuming gas station miles away from his home, one he rarely frequented, and used the payphone. The call was brief, coded in a way only another former intelligence operative would understand. "Shadow Broker," Logan began, using their old call sign. "I have a package that needs immediate delivery. High value, volatile contents. Need secure pickup, deep cover." He gave a vague location, a general area of the Keys, and a time window. He didn't mention Sarah or Echo or even the bikers directly, just enough to pique Miller's interest without exposing too much over an unsecured line. Miller, recognizing the call sign and Logan's measured tone, simply replied, "Understood. We'll deploy assets accordingly. Expect contact within 72 hours. The response was cryptic but reassuring. Logan hung up, a knot of apprehension still tightening in his stomach. He knew Miller was good, but the scale of this operation, coupled with Logan's reclusive lifestyle, would make Miller understandably cautious. He was aware of the skepticism he'd face. His past, his isolation, might paint him as an unreliable witness, a wild card. He needed more than just a vague tip-off. He needed undeniable proof, something that would cut through any bureaucratic red tape or skepticism and force immediate action. Back at his secluded home, Sarah, though still shaken, had found a new resolve. Her fear was slowly being replaced by a fierce determination to see these men brought to justice. As Logan considered what additional evidence he might need, Sarah suddenly spoke, her voice still a little shaky but clear. "The leader," she began, "the one they called Viper. He had a tattoo. Not just any tattoo. On his left forearm, a coiled snake, but its eyes, they weren't just red. They glowed. Like actually glowed in certain light. And he always wore a massive silver chain, with a pendant shaped like a viper's head, its fangs dripping." Logan listened intently. These weren't mere details. They were distinct, identifying markers that could single out a specific individual from a crowd, even in a gang known for its intimidating aesthetics. This wasn't just a biker. This was Viper, the architect of this illicit enterprise. Sarah's photographic memory, born from terror, provided a crucial piece of the puzzle. This specific description could be the key to convincing Miller, to turning skepticism into urgent action. He realized his next step was clear. He needed to confirm Sarah's observations, to get visual confirmation of Viper and his unique identifying features. It was a reconnaissance mission that would put them in extreme peril, but it was essential. Logan knew he needed more than just a vague report. He required irrefutable evidence, something to solidify his claims in the eyes of a skeptical bureaucracy. The fragmented recollections Sarah offered, particularly about the biker leader's distinctive appearance, provided a clear, actionable objective. He communicated his plan to Sarah, emphasizing the extreme risks involved in a direct observation mission. Her fear was palpable, a tremor in her voice, but a steely resolve flickered in her eyes. She understood the necessity. This wasn't merely about bringing down a criminal enterprise. It was about ensuring her own safety, guaranteeing these men could never again inflict their brand of terror. The reconnaissance mission was meticulously planned, drawing on every ounce of Logan's marine training in stealth and intelligence gathering. They would approach the notorious biker hangout, a dilapidated marina known locally as the Boneyard, under the cover of the pre-dawn darkness. The objective, to observe the leader, confirm Sarah's descriptive details, and ideally capture photographic evidence. Echo's role would be paramount, providing a silent, undetectable approach through the water and acting as an early warning system. As the first sliver of false dawn painted the eastern sky, Logan and Echo navigated the murky channels leading to the Boneyard. The air hung heavy with the smell of diesel and stale beer, a stark contrast to the pristine ocean air they usually breathed. Logan, camouflaged in dark clothing, moved like a shadow along the decaying docks, his senses acutely aware of every creak and rustle. Sarah, hidden further back in a dense patch of mangroves, watched with bated breath, her heart a frantic drum against her ribs. Echo remained submerged, occasionally breaking the surface with a barely perceptible ripple, her sonar mapping the shallow waters and detecting any unexpected movement. Logan found a vantage point amongst a tangle of derelict fishing nets and overturned skiffs, offering a direct view of a ramshackle office building that served as the bikers' central hub. He set up a compact, high-resolution camera with a powerful zoom, its night vision capabilities now invaluable. Moments later, the door to the office creaked open, spilling a weak yellow light onto the dock. A hulking figure emerged, his silhouette unmistakable. He was indeed the man Sarah had described, a towering presence with a distinctive swagger. As he moved into a patch of slightly brighter light, Logan zoomed in, his lens capturing the intricate, fiery dragon tattoo that snaked up the man's left arm, precisely where Sarah had remembered it. His face, scarred and hard, was perfectly framed within the camera's view. Snap, snap, snap. Logan captured multiple shots, ensuring clarity and detail. The man even fiddled with a heavy silver chain around his neck, revealing a large, ornate skull pendant, another detail Sarah had vividly recalled. Success. The tangible proof was now secured. Logan carefully retreated, Echo silently shadowing his every move. They rendezvoused with Sarah, who exhaled a long, shaky breath of relief upon seeing his nod of confirmation. The danger had been immense, the stakes impossibly high, but they had achieved their goal. With this new, undeniable evidence in hand, Logan felt a surge of renewed purpose. He had what he needed. The anonymous tips and vague warnings could now be bolstered by photographic proof, a direct link to the leader and, by extension, the entire criminal enterprise. He began to refine his strategy, shifting from merely gathering intelligence to planning a swift and decisive action. The goal was no longer just to expose them, but to orchestrate their downfall in a way that minimized risk to Sarah and himself and maximized the chances of a complete shutdown of their operation. The game had changed. The weight of the evidence pressed hard against Logan, a tangible burden in the humid night air. He knew he couldn't storm the compound, a lone wolf against an entire pack of ruthless outlaws. Direct confrontation was not an option. It would only put Sarah and himself in grave danger, likely ending in disaster. Instead, he meticulously began to formulate a plan, drawing deep from the well of his Marine Corps training. This wouldn't be about brute force, but about precision, deception, and leveraging the environment itself. The trap he envisioned was subtle, designed to expose their activities without ever truly engaging them, allowing the authorities to step in and clean up the mess he unveiled. He spent the next few days in a flurry of quiet, intense activity. His small skiff became a mobile command center, navigating the intricate network of channels and mangrove tunnels, always observing, always planning. He studied the bikers' routines, their shift changes, their preferred routes, the subtle nuances of their operation. They were creatures of habit, and habits, Logan knew, could be exploited. Sarah, despite her lingering fear, unexpectedly emerged as a vital asset. Her intimate, terrifying knowledge of the gang's inner workings, their leaders' quirks, and even the specific frequencies of their crude radio communications proved invaluable. She recalled how certain supply drops were timed with specific tidal flows, which areas they considered secure, and even their lazy guard rotations. "They always move the biggest shipments at dawn on the incoming tide," she whispered, her voice barely audible, "when the water is high enough over the sandbars and they think no one is awake to see." This detail was a linchpin. Logan saw the vulnerability. He used his knowledge of the local currents, the fickle nature of the Florida Keys weather, and the bikers' predictable patterns to begin setting his snare. It wasn't a physical trap, but a carefully orchestrated series of events designed to draw their attention, force their hand, and ultimately reveal their operation in plain sight to the authorities he now had a tenuous line with. He deployed an array of discrete, motion-activated cameras, waterproof and camouflaged, strategically placed along their known transport routes and near the hidden cache. These weren't for live surveillance, but to provide irrefutable proof, time-stamped and geotagged should the authorities need more than just his word. He also rigged a couple of old, defunct fishing nets with floats and small, almost invisible lines, not to catch fish, but to gently snag at precisely the right moment, creating a minor, yet distracting impediment in a narrow channel the bikers frequently used. The tension in their secluded hideaway grew palpable with each passing hour. Sarah, though brave, often looked out at the water with a haunted gaze, picturing the men who had left her for dead. Logan himself felt the familiar thrum of adrenaline, the kind that had once preceded a major engagement. He checked and rechecked his equipment, the comms device, the positioning of his hidden markers. Every detail had to be perfect. One misstep, one false move, and not only would their plan crumble, but their lives would be forfeit. There were moments of quiet reflection, shared glances that spoke volumes about their shared predicament and growing reliance on one another. Echo remained a constant, reassuring presence, often circling their skiff, her sonar sweeps an invisible shield. The designated morning finally arrived, cloaked in the pre-dawn gloom. A heavy mist hung over the water, shrouding the mangroves in an eerie silence. Logan and Sarah, hidden in a dense cluster of red mangroves, watched the channel with bated breath. Sarah clutched a small, battered compass, a relic from her past life, its needle quivering almost as much as her hands. The air grew thick with anticipation, each rustle of leaves, each distant bird cry amplifying the suspense. The waiting was the hardest part, a slow, agonizing crawl of seconds turning into minutes. They knew the bikers would be approaching soon, completely unaware that their carefully guarded secret was about to be laid bare. A low rumble, distant at first, then growing steadily louder, sliced through the oppressive stillness. The sound was unmistakable, the throaty growl of powerful outboard motors, several of them, cutting through the water with purpose. Sarah's grip tightened on the compass, her knuckles white. Logan, peering through a small opening in the mangrove leaves, felt a familiar surge of adrenaline, cold and sharp. This was it, the target. 3 large, dark speedboats, heavily laden, emerged from the mist, their silhouettes ominous against the pale pre-dawn sky. They were moving faster than usual, a clear indication they were indeed carrying a significant haul, just as Sarah had predicted. Their lead boat, the one known to carry the biker leader, veered slightly, just enough to brush against the almost invisible fishing net Logan had subtly placed. A small shudder ran through the vessel, a momentary hesitation that caused the leader to curse, a guttural sound that carried faintly across the water. This minor snag was exactly what Logan had planned. It wasn't meant to stop them, but to throw off their rhythm, creating a moment of distraction. As the lead boat paused, its crew momentarily focused on the entangled net. The two following boats pressed forward, navigating the narrow channel. This slight miscalculation in their formation exposed their flank to a hidden alcove, precisely where Logan's other, less obvious trap lay waiting. Unseen by the bikers, a series of small, buoyant markers, camouflaged to appear as natural debris, were designed to create a subtle divergence in the current, funneling the second and third boats into a slightly shallower trajectory than intended. Suddenly, a loud metallic clang echoed across the water as the propeller of the second boat struck something solid and unseen below the surface. The engine shrieked in protest, then sputtered and died, leaving the boat dead in the water, rocking precariously. A storm of angry shouts erupted from the bikers, a mix of frustration and rising panic. The lead boat, now free of the fishing net, turned back, its leader barking orders, his voice thick with rage. This was the moment Logan had been waiting for. From the dense cover of the mangroves, Logan moved with practiced stealth. He hadn't planned for direct confrontation, but the chaos had presented an opportunity he couldn't ignore. As the bikers on the now disabled boat struggled with their damaged engine, a couple of them, clearly agitated and armed, began to scan the surrounding mangroves, their eyes narrowed with suspicion. One, a burly man with a distinctive skull tattoo on his neck, pointed directly at Logan's position. "There, I see movement," he roared, raising a rusty shotgun. Logan didn't hesitate. He launched himself from the mangroves, a blur of motion. The shot from the shotgun ripped through the air, tearing leaves where he had been only a split second before. Logan landed silently on the stern of the disabled boat, his marine training kicking in, every move calculated and efficient. He disarmed the first biker with a swift, brutal strike to the wrist, sending the shotgun clattering onto the deck. The man crumpled, clutching his hand. The skull-tattooed biker charged, brandishing a large knife. Logan met him with a series of defensive blocks, his movements fluid and precise. He didn't want to kill them, just neutralize the immediate threat without drawing more attention from the other boats. He used the biker's own momentum against him, a quick pivot and a well-placed elbow to the sternum, sending the man sprawling. Before the others could react, a new sound, distinct and authoritative, began to fill the air, the rhythmic thwack, thwack, thwack of approaching helicopter blades. Simultaneously, the piercing wail of police sirens grew louder from the distant shore, rapidly closing in. It was the cavalry, arriving exactly on cue. Logan's meticulous planning, the discreet contact with his old friend in law enforcement, the undeniable evidence captured by his hidden cameras had paid off. The bikers, caught completely off guard, their boats surrounded by the converging forces of air and sea, threw down their weapons, their faces a mixture of shock and utter defeat. The game was over. The rumble of powerful engines finally pierced the humid morning silence, growing steadily louder as a small convoy of flat-bottomed skiffs laden with shadowed cargo emerged from the mist. The lead boat, a larger, more powerful vessel, was piloted by the menacing figure Logan had identified as the leader. He watched, a cold certainty settling in his gut, as the first two boats navigated the narrow channel, exactly as Sarah had predicted. Then, a subtle snag. One of the old fishing nets, rigged just so, caught the propeller of the second skiff. Not enough to stop it, but enough to cause a sputter, a momentary loss of control, and a sharp swerve that sent a few strategically placed waterproof containers tumbling into the murky water. The bikers cursed, their shouts echoing across the flats. This minor chaos was the signal. Almost immediately, a small, discreet drone, launched from a distant, hidden support boat Logan had arranged through his contacts, zipped into position, its thermal cameras silently recording the ensuing scramble. The bikers, momentarily distracted by the lost cargo and the fouled propeller, began to retrieve the floating packages. This was their mistake. It exposed the illicit contents, clearly visible on the drone's high-definition feed, providing irrefutable proof of their smuggling operation. Just as they were pulling the last container back aboard, a series of rapid-fire flashes erupted from the distant shoreline. Not gunfire, but the synchronized activation of the motion-activated cameras Logan had deployed, their infrared beams painting the scene for another hidden surveillance team. The bikers, realizing they were being watched, reacted with immediate, violent anger. Their leader, roaring obscenities, pointed directly towards Logan and Sarah's redoubt. They had been compromised. A few of the younger, more reckless members jumped into a smaller, faster skiff, gunning the engine and heading straight for the mangroves. Logan knew this was coming. He moved with the fluid grace of a seasoned combatant, positioning Sarah behind a particularly thick root system, handing her a small, waterproof communicator. "Stay quiet. Wait for my signal," he instructed, his voice low and steady. He then moved to intercept the approaching biker skiff, not with aggression, but with tactical precision, aiming to create a bottleneck, a distraction. He emerged from the mangroves just as the biker skiff slammed into the shallow water, its propeller churning uselessly in the mud. The two bikers on board, enraged, leaped out, splashing towards him. Logan didn't wait. He moved swiftly, utilizing the uneven terrain and the waist-deep water to his advantage. The first biker, a hulking figure, lunged forward with a rusty pipe. Logan parried the blow, his years of training kicking in, not aiming to incapacitate permanently, but to disarm and subdue. A quick twist, a sudden movement, and the pipe clattered uselessly into the water. The biker stumbled, splashing. Before he could recover, Logan had him in a chokehold, pressing him against a mangrove trunk. The second biker, momentarily stunned by his partner's swift defeat, hesitated, fumbling for a knife. Just as the second biker raised his arm, a powerful, dark shape shot through the water. Echo, her loyalty unwavering, slammed into the biker from behind, sending him sprawling face-first into the muddy shallows. The knife skittered away. Logan, releasing the first biker who was now gasping for air, moved to secure the second. The entire confrontation lasted barely a minute, a blur of motion and splashing. Suddenly, the distinctive thrum of powerful engines filled the air. Not the bikers' engines, but the unmistakable roar of multiple law enforcement vessels converging rapidly. Flashing blue and red lights cut through the remaining mist. Helicopters whirred overhead, their searchlights cutting swathes through the gloom. The trap was sprung. The cavalry had arrived. The main biker fleet, caught between the approaching authorities and their grounded compatriots, realized their game was up. Hands began to rise, slowly, reluctantly, into the dawn. The confrontation was over. The aftermath was a whirlwind of activity. Law enforcement officers, a mix of local police, DEA agents, and Coast Guard personnel, swarmed the area. The remaining bikers were rounded up, their boats secured, and the incriminating cargo meticulously catalogued. Sarah, pale but resolute, emerged from her hiding place, guided by an officer Logan had identified as his contact. She provided her statement, her calm, clear voice a testament to her courage and resilience. The evidence, both physical and electronic, was overwhelming. The drone footage, the hidden camera images, Logan's detailed observations, and Sarah's testimony painted an undeniable picture of an extensive smuggling operation. As the morning progressed, the processing of the scene continued, a methodical ballet of justice. Sarah was taken away by a female officer, assured of her safety and promised protection. She paused, turning back towards Logan, a silent message of profound gratitude passing between them. A new chapter, she knew, had begun for her. For Logan, a different kind of resolution settled over him. The weight of responsibility, the constant vigilance began to lift. He watched the last of the biker boats being towed away, a testament to a threat neutralized, a wrong righted. His secluded world, once defined by his isolation, had been irrevocably changed. Echo nudged his hand gently, a silent affirmation of their shared journey. The peace he now felt wasn't the peace of solitude, but the profound calm of purpose fulfilled, a quiet triumph that resonated deep within his marine soul. The reclusive veteran, once lost in his past, had found his way back, guided by the improbable bond with a dolphin and the desperate cry of a young woman. The dawn broke, painting the eastern sky with hues of bruised purple and fiery orange, a stark contrast to the quiet resolution settling within Logan. The apprehension of the preceding days had finally given way to a profound sense of peace. He watched the last police boat disappear over the horizon, carrying away the remnants of the outlaw biker gang, their reign of terror over Islamorada extinguished. Sarah, surrounded by compassionate officers and social workers, had looked back at him from the dock, a faint, grateful smile illuminating her tired face. He knew she would be all right, her future, though uncertain, now open and unburdened by fear. Echo nudged his hand with her rostrum, a soft, familiar gesture that grounded him. Their partnership, forged in the crucible of this extraordinary ordeal, had deepened beyond anything he could have imagined. No longer was Echo simply a rescued companion. She was an extension of his own purpose, a keen observer and an indispensable ally. Their bond, once a quiet solace in his reclusive life, had proven its strength under fire, a testament to the unspoken language of trust and mutual respect. He realized then that his skills, honed by years of military service and then refined by his solitary existence, were not meant just for personal survival, but for a greater good. The isolation that had once been his shield had become a cage, and Sarah's plight, Echo's unwavering loyalty, had reminded him of the profound importance of connection and meaningful action. The legacy of their actions rippled through the quiet waters of Islamorada. The once shadowy corners of the reef, previously exploited by the unscrupulous, began to reclaim their natural serenity. Local fishermen spoke in hushed tones of the phantom rescuer and his dolphin, their stories weaving into the rich tapestry of Keys folklore. Justice had been served, not through brute force, but through meticulous observation, strategic planning, and an unwavering commitment to what was right. Sarah, now far from the Keys, was beginning a new life. Her second chance a direct result of Logan's courage and Echo's remarkable intelligence. He occasionally received updates through his former contact, small assurances that she was thriving, moving forward. Logan found himself looking at the vast expanse of the ocean with renewed eyes. It wasn't just a place to escape, but a world teeming with life, a delicate ecosystem that needed vigilant protection. He began volunteering with local marine conservation efforts, channeling his tactical mind into mapping vulnerable habitats and monitoring endangered species. He still preferred his solitude, but it was now a solitude infused with purpose, punctuated by meaningful interactions. Echo was always by his side, a silver streak against the turquoise water, her playful clicks and whistles a constant reminder of the incredible connection they shared, a bond stronger than any words could convey. The story was one of unexpected heroism, a testament to the quiet strength found in the most unlikely of heroes. A Marine veteran, haunted by his past, and a dolphin, given a second chance, had come together to face down darkness, transforming their own lives in the process. Their journey highlighted the resilience of the human spirit, the profound intelligence of the natural world, and the powerful, enduring impact of connection in a world that often feels fractured. Logan knew their adventures were far from over. The Keys, with all their beauty and hidden dangers, would undoubtedly present new challenges. But now, he was ready. He and Echo,